Hi there, welcome to Brick in the Block. In today's video, I wanted to quickly talk about what my predictions are for what we might see next year in 2026 in this Disney Princess Castle line. Now, LEGO hasn't officially come out and said this is a line or that we're doing it every year and it is a Disney Princess Castles or it's a Disney Park Castles or a Disney Iconic Locations or what. So this is all just speculating in theory and predictions, but I thought it was fun. So yeah, so here's my thoughts on what we won't see. So I don't think it'll be a less popular princess, but before we get into that, how I got there, I compiled a list, a graph, a chart, if you will, of all the princesses and their counterparts and the villains and which ones we have minifigures for, because I think that does factor into the equation. I think LEGO will be using ones that they have some assets for. I also think it's important that they have an iconic location. So all that being said, what do I think we will not see? So I don't think we're going to see a less popular princess. So as much as I would love to see a set based on Atlantis and Princess Kida, I don't think her or Merida or Rhea or Mulan are really going to be in the mix for this. At least not yet. I also think a princess without an iconic location are out again. So again, I don't see Rhea or Merida, Mulan, or Moana in play for that reason. When you think of those princesses, they don't really have a home base location that's like super iconic visually. And so for that reason, they may visit beautiful and iconic locales in their film, but they don't have a standout castle or home base that immediately springs to mind when you think about them. As opposed to like Sleeping Beauty, who you think about that castle. The one I want to give a shout out to that I don't see happening because of how many new molds it would take for minifigures, and they really wouldn't be minifigures, they'd be Lego animals, is Pride Rock from Lion King. I think that would be a really cool Lego set and iconic. I just don't see it happening because of how many new molds it would take to make that happen satisfactorily. So moving on from what we won't see to what we might see. If this isn't a movie-based line, but a park-based line, seeing as how Cinderella's Castle isn't called Cinderella's Castle, it's called Disney Castle. And the other two entries into this line, the Beauty and the Beast Castle, can be seen in Tokyo Disney, and Snow White's Cottage kind of can be seen in the Snow White's Mine Ride. We could see things like Tower of Terror or Haunted Mansion, which would be thrilling. Maybe if this is not in this line's future, I think they should still be Lego sets somewhere in the future. I would absolutely die for a modular Tower of Terror. Can you imagine? Similarly, imagining a Haunted Mansion modular, equally incredible. So I could also see a world where we get something Pixar based, like an Andy's Room kind of thing from Toy Story. But I think we have more castles, more princesses to see first. So I don't think that's likely. I think it's also possible that the year the Disney World opens the new Villains Land that they're talking about, that we get a villains themed castle. And I think that would be really exciting. Now moving on to more of what I think we will see. I think we'll see another princess castle. I think the trend could already be established where we get a larger castle and then something smaller. So if you look at the trend from Cinderella's castle to a smaller build like Snow White's Cottage, and then to a larger thing like Beauty and the Beast castle. So then if that's the trend, then next year might be something smaller, leading way to something bigger in 2027. So with all that in mind, I made my chart, and um, and so I have 5 thoughts I wanted to share with you as far as predictions. 3 are things that I don't think are going to happen next year, but things that I think should happen. And 2 are my predictions for what next year will bring. So the first thought of what I think should happen at some point, but I don't think will happen next year, is Pocahontas. I know that might sound a little bit left field, but walk with me here. I'm picturing a grandmother willow based theme. Iconic. She's iconic. It would be something completely different to have a giant grandmother willow in the middle of the set, and then 2 builds on either side, one being Jamestown and one being Chief Powhatan's village. And you could, for minifigures, it would include John Smith, Pocahontas, Chief Radcliffe, Chief Powhatan, Nakoma, Kocoum, Percy, Miko, Flint. I think that would be really lovely and completely different, and a way of paying homage to a great Disney film. Another one I personally would love to see, because it's one of my favorite Disney films, is Frozen. But we already have a Frozen castle, Adam. I know. We have the Ice Palace of Elsa's. What we don't have is the Arendelle Castle. We have some mini play sets for it, but we don't have a full-scale version. I would love to see that come. I think we could see this too. Maybe this could be a bigger castle for 2027 when Frozen 3 comes out. I don't know. But we could also see Frozen 3 getting its own range of sets, so maybe not. If this came out in 2027, this could also match the smaller set in 2026, big set in 2027 kind of trend that I'm predicting. For minifigures in an Arendelle castle, I could see a Baby Anna and a Baby Elsa minifigure, as well as Queen Iduna and King Adnar, Hans, Kristoff, Sven, Olaf, and I think we would get 2 sets of Anna and Elsa. So probably Frozen 1, and then either Frozen 2 or 3, depending on when it releases, which I think would be very exciting. So yeah, what do you think? And then another one I think should happen, but again, probably won't, for 2026 at least, is Aladdin. Now Aladdin, I'm not sure that this set as a castle would give us what we actually want this set to give us. So we already have the mini scale Agrabah castle. And so a castle version of that would be awesome, right? But would it? Because what you actually want from an Aladdin set is that castle, but you also want the Cave of Wonders, and you also want Aladdin's hideout. So my dream would be a set that kind of encapsulates all 3 of those. Minifigures would include Jasmine, Aladdin, Sultan, Jafar, Genie, Abu, Iago, Raja, that main guard, the red Genie Jafar, Prince Ali, red Hourglass Jasmine. I would love to see this as like an anniversary set and have all these elements. So I don't know if it's a perfect fit for this line, for me at least, but maybe down the line. I think the real thing that doing this has really shown me is that Disney's really, and Lego are really missing out in not doing more sets that are not in mini doll form, are not for current Disney shows or movies, but are for that nostalgia factor, are for that 18+ audience in minifigure scale, and are addressing full lines for these movies. Because the more I think about it, yes, we're getting the Beauty and the Beast castle, and that's wonderful, but we could also get a Belle's Cottage, and that would be wonderful too, and I think just as many people would buy that. And now that we're talking about Aladdin, I just mentioned 3 sets that would really make a great line. And I think each of these movies has that kind of nostalgia factor, has that kind of built-in audience for it. And I think, yeah, I think as long as it was minifigure based for the older demographic, it would go gangbusters. Now moving on to the two that I actually think we might see in 2026. Sleeping Beauty's Castle. I think there's a big chance it could be Sleeping Beauty's Castle. This would only be if my prediction that the smaller, larger set thing isn't real. If it's just a new castle every year, or a new princess location every year, it could be Sleeping Beauty's Castle next year. If not, then I think, and the smaller, bigger trend is, then my prediction is Sleeping Beauty's Castle for 2027. Sleeping Beauty's Castle, I couldn't see including the fairies the way they did with that Merryweather minifigure before. There's a very, very tiny micro minifigure of Merryweather that's absolutely darling. I would love to see all three in that scale. I think the minifigures would include Aurora with both pink gown and blue gown variations, Maleficent, Philip, finally, the king and queen, the three fairies. I would love to see the dragon form of Maleficent included. Again, I think this is something that we could see a full line for Sleeping Beauty. I'd love to get a Maleficent castle. I would love to get a Briar Rose cottage. So, I don't know. But I think this is a no-brainer because it's also such an iconic Disney landmark because it's the mascot for the California Disneyland. And when the new version of the Disney castle that came out in 2023, Cinderella's Castle, came out, there was a lot of rumors that it was going to be this one. So I think this one will happen eventually. Now, my number one prediction for what next year's castle will be is Tangled and Rapunzel's Tower. I think this makes the most sense to me. I think going from what my theory is with the smaller scale, larger scale idea, this makes complete sense. It's a little bit smaller, but still an iconic location. I think it's such a beloved brand, such a beloved film and location, and like when you think about Rapunzel, when you think about Tangled, you think about that tower. For minifigures, I think we would get Rapunzel, Flynn Rider, Mother Gothel, Maximus, Pascal, and Lego already has the assets for it, as far as we already have Rapunzel, Flynn Rider, and Pascal in minifigure form. So we would only need a few more to complete that set. They could expand it more to include more characters, but those are the ones who make sense for the tower. If the build were a little bit larger and included that Ugly Duckling Tavern, that would be cool, but I don't see that happening. I think it would stick to the tower and be a really substantial tower build, which I think would be fantastic. I would much rather see that than see a smaller build that wastes pieces that could go to a really substantial tower. Yeah, and especially I think there's a live action film version in development, so it makes sense. It just makes complete sense to me for what next year would bring. We've seen it 3-4 times in mini doll form, the tower, and none of them are fully satisfying. So I think this would be the time to get a really satisfying build for Rapunzel's Tower. Bottom line, Lego Disney is opening a door to minifigure based sets geared more toward adults, and I think they're discovering the market is there for it. What I would love to see is more sets with minifigures by Disney at different price points, because I think they'd be surprised by how well those sets sell as well when compared to mini dolls. And I mean no shade to mini dolls. They're doing some fantastic things with mini dolls these days. I just reviewed 2 Frozen sets. Check those out. And the mini doll printing on those were fantastic. The Wicked mini dolls, chef's kiss. But I do think for these nostalgia-based sets, minifigures is the way to go. I think Lego Disney is missing out on things like sets based on their park rides, sets based on older IP, and that's what these sets show. The market for these nostalgia sets is huge, and those who want to buy them want them with minifigures over mini dolls for the most part. And yeah, so that's my thoughts on what we could see next year in 2026 in this slot where we're now seeing the Beauty and the Beast castle, where we've seen Snow White's cottage and Cinderella's castle. Thank you so much for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.